Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do a video response to Little Mermaid on my fairy tale. However, on this tag I'm going to cheat a lot because I'm pretty much a bookworm and I've many fairy tales that I really love a lot. For this tag, I did try to look online for a better definition of fairy tales because I thought about this tag for some time and I believe that not only did I forget some of the stories, the story titles, the story gist, I've also a few fairy tales, stories that I feel they are fairy tales that are not very popular, so I wonder if they are fairy tales at all. But by definition online, it seems that even books like this, a book I acquire very recently, the Mahabharata, may be seen as a fairy tale because of the appearance of elves, fairies of a certain kind within the story itself. But to play it safe, I'm just going to introduce some of the stories, fairy tales that have been an impact in my life. I saw the video by Asia and I looked through the comments and I was brought back to my childhood where I have read some of the stories that I've forgotten, and I did forget one story that did scare me a little. Later I'll go on. So talk about it. So for now, what this book that you see in front of you here, it's the only fairy tale that I have, the only fairy tale story that I have left from my childhood. In Chinese, this is 人鱼公主 or the Little Mermaid. Unlike Asia and many others, this Little Mermaid is not my favorite fairy tale, but I have it here because it has a value to me. So if you look at the illustrations, there's no mention of the illustrator, so I cannot attribute it to anyone. But if you look at the illustration, it looks very manga-ish, very shoujo manga. So that was what attracted me to the story itself. And to me, my favorite illustration, the illustration that made the deal for me buying this book was this illustration of Ariel looking at the other princess with envy of a kind. But it was this illustration that I pestered my mother to draw with me when I was very young. So in those days we can browse through books, and I believe even now we can still browse through pictures books like this, and we flip it open to this illustration and we take out our art materials and start to draw in the middle of the bookshop. And it was only after a few visits that I managed to convince my mother to buy this book for me. So Little Mermaid, I have this book until now because it has such a value to me and it was really very pretty. So another story that was mentioned in the comments for the video, in the video itself, was the story of the Snow Queen. Now, when I went to look up that story, I realized it was one story that frightened me a lot when I was a child, because as many of you know, the boy character Kai was became very not such a good person after mirror, a shard of glass fall into his eyes. So that story frightened me a lot because it showed me that people can become evil due to outside influence, or we know the Lucifer effect. So we can get evil from outside influence, or is it really that we are born evil at heart? So this story was one that frightened me a lot. And after that, I would like to talk about a few stories that I do not really remember their titles, or even the gist of the story, or even if they belong to a popular story or not. So one of which is that the usual trope of a princess having an evil stepmother. So in this case, it's the same. There's an evil stepmother involved, but then the evil stepmother tried to poison the princess by having a toad sit on a hard space when she was bathing. So that happened, but the princess was so innocent that the poisonous toad changed into a frog at that point. So I was very struck by this imagery, because it tells me that if you really have a purpose of a sort, or maybe a pure heart, there's nothing that can sway you off your path. And another story that I do not remember the title of or the author was that there's a witch who has a heart made out of ice, the iceberg, those ice, and a king fell in love with her, and he tried to move her, but because her heart is so ice cold, she could not feel anything at all. And I remember the ending of the story was that the king managed to move her to love him, but she died because her frozen heart melted. Up till now, maybe you can see that I like fairy tales that are a bit dark in nature, but I did not remember all these stories until the video mentioned them. And I would like to move on to maybe 3 stories that I find very kind of show who I am in this way. One of which was also a story that was mentioned within the comments itself, which is the Wild Swans, whereby the princess had and several the prince were turned into swans by the evil stepmother, and the princess have to knit some kind of clothing for the princess to break the spell. But then the clothing itself is not made out of cloth. It's made out of a kind of painful a plant that has spikes all over. I recently read several Celtic myths, and I did see some kind of resemblance between this story and the Children of Lir or something like that. I will put it in the comments the description box. So why do I love this story? It's because for once, the princess is not somebody who is a damsel in distress, but a key influence in breaking the spell. Like, she cannot speak, she must keep silent during the process of knitting the clothing, and she have to step on the the plants, which definitely hurt her a lot, but she managed to endure through all these trials. And I can see where this story kind of fits into what the modern woman have to face. And in a way, it's kind of like an inspiration to me. The next, I will talk about two stories together because they are from the same author, Oscar Wilde. So it's these two stories that I'm not sure whether it's classified as fairy tales or not, but I will just talk about them here. The first one is The Selfish Giant. So in this story, there's a giant who has a garden that is so beautiful that many children come in to play. But because he's so selfish, he basically asked them to get off his property. And because of that place not having life at all, it became very fallen. And the giant finally, learned his lesson, and there's some kind of a religious overtone to this because there's a child who brought the giant to, who was Jesus Christ in disguise, and brought the giant at the end of his life to heaven. I like this story because it is very touching, and in a way it kind of show my, I usually talk about it on my Instagram that I'm pretty much a cynic, and so when you're a cynic, you don't trust people that easily, so your heart is kind of like a garden which is walled all around. And this story kind of say that it's okay to let people into your heart, or to be a bit more open with your feelings. And there's actually a lot of love in the world. The last story that I'm going to talk about, the last fairy tale, will be The Happy Prince. So this is a bit more, maybe I would say this is a bit more famous than The Selfish Giant. So in this story, the main character is a golden statue, a prince, and a swallow who landed under this statue for a rest. So the statue basically kept asking the swallow to bring the gold leaf, the gems, the jewels on his body to be distributed to the poor people all around. But by the end of the story, the swallow kind of died because of it's supposed to be migrating, but because of the prince, because of how it was moved by the prince thoughts, it decided to stay. And also the statue was put down because when you give too much, what you are left is just some ugly looking thing. So it was put down. Another happily never after story. I like this story a lot. It often brings me to tears because for one thing, it tells me how people look very much on appearance, and even if you are a nice person and you do not look pretty, there's nothing more to be said. And the other thing which I would say is a bit more optimistic here is that no matter how you look, if your heart is pure, it's all fine. At least you never let yourself down. Yeah, I hope you enjoy this short video. Thank you.